Welcome to Conversations from the World of Allergy, a podcast produced by the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. I am your host, Rebecca Sapp. I am a board-certified allergist and immunologist and a fellowship director who always enjoys learning more about the exciting field of allergy and immunology. Our podcast series will use interviews with thought leaders from the world of allergy and immunology to keep you up to date on new developments and to review key points in the field. Today's edition from the Conversations of the World of Allergy podcast series will focus on the upcoming AAAAI WAO Joint Congress, taking place from February 28th to March 3rd in San Diego, California. We are pleased to welcome Dr. Julie Wang. Dr. Wang is a clinician and clinical researcher in the Jaffe Food Allergy Institute at Mount Sinai in New York. Her clinical research interests include novel therapeutics for food allergy, as well as the epidemiology and management of food allergy. She also serves as the chair of the program committee for the AAAAI WAO Joint Congress, which makes her the perfect guest to discuss the upcoming meeting. Dr. Wang, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. I'd like to start just by getting to know you a little better. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and include maybe something you like to do outside of medicine?
Sure. So I am a pediatric allergist and immunologist here at Mount Sinai, as you already said. My week is filled with clinical work as well as teaching our trainees, both our fellows as well as residents, and then doing research, primarily clinical research with a focus on clinical trials developing new therapies for food allergy. Outside of the hospital, I have taken up the hobby of jogging during the pandemic and have continued to do so most often with my husband. I am thrilled when my daughter is willing to join us. She has to slow down to be able to join us, so I appreciate her effort to do that. And we are fortunate to live close enough that Central Park is often the place that we like to go to jog. And then I have also tried to increase my reading for pleasure and have joined a book club with some moms that I had met at my children's schools, and we have continued that for the last several years.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite book you read recently?
So right now I'm actually in the middle of reading James, the book that talks about Jim, from Jim's perspective, from the Huckleberry Finn, as you know, that's what I read in high school. Another book that I had read recently is Disorientation, and it's about an academic who kind of discovers some facts were made up and how that impacted the careers of the academics who built their research based on this individual. So it was very interesting, kind of considering that I'm an academic, kind of where the truth lies and kind of how people build up their careers and what happens if one little brick in that foundation is not as stable as you thought it was.
That sounds like a really interesting book. I'll have to put that on my list. Yes. Yeah. So what made you decide to choose allergy immunology as a field?
So I went into pediatric residency with an idea that I am the type of person who probably functions better knowing very deeply about a specific area. So as I was looking through the subspecialties, allergy immunology caught my eye because of kind of how it affects so many people, allergies, and they don't even realize it. And in particular, food allergy was an area that I had not heard much about at all during residency, but knew that one of my friends had said he was diagnosed when he was very, very young. And every time we had meals together, be it in or out, have to be very, very careful about avoiding egg and nuts and fish. And at my place one day, he accidentally ate a lasagna that contained egg, and he realized that, or actually we realized that, and we did not know what to do. So we were sitting there kind of staring at him, wondering, is something going to happen? I'm not a fully trained doctor yet. actually. But the hospital was very nearby, so should we take him? Should we not? And fortunately, he did not have any symptoms. And obviously not the advice that I would give as an allergist at this point. He went home and kind of tried various things and realized that he was not egg allergic. And so trying to sort out that why that was the case with some reading, I learned that, I think more evident now that there are many people who outgrow their egg allergy. But he was just never reevaluated. And so he had carried this diagnosis with him for, 20 plus years of his life. And life just completely changed for him after that accident. He ate a ton of breakfast foods, a ton of desserts, I think gained at least 10 pounds in that process. But it was really life changing. What he also did, which, again, I would not advise my patients do, but he tested nuts and fish himself and learned that he, in fact, was still allergic to those things. So kind of realizing that food allergies can be so different within a single individual really kind of intrigued me. And that's how I started investigating the field more.
That's wonderful. I've had that experience with patients where they were evaluated as a child, told they were to avoid all these things, and have been even into adulthood. And what a life-changing thing it can be to be able to add some of those things back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was thrilled.
I bet. Maybe not as good for his weight, but
yeah. He's since taken up running, so
there you go. See, it also helped him to get fitter. So overall, his allergy, evaluation has been good for him.
Yes.
So what made you initially get involved in the Quad AI?
So as a fellow, I attended the Quad AI because that was the meeting that our division all went to. And I loved it. The educational sessions, the fellow and training focus activities was a lot of fun, and I got to meet a lot of people. But what really kept me in the organization and it really has carried through is I distinctly remember going to the Adverse Reactions to Foods Committee meeting and showing up a little late because those are very early morning meetings. And I ended up sitting off to the side. And a more senior member, a faculty member, not at my institution, as we were walking out, he said, "Oh, why were you not sitting at the table?" And I said, "Oh, I came in late. I was a little embarrassed." And he said, no, you should be at the table. I want to see you at the table next time. And the fact that someone outside of my institution noticed me and specifically kind of reached out and talked to me and encouraged me to take a seat at the table. And this was all before, the Sheryl Sandberg Lean In books. That really made me happy, to say the least. So one, I was seen, but two, I was encouraged to engage. And so that's what I did the following year and did that at other committee meetings. And it just really kind of expanded my whole world because I got to meet a lot of different people. I was encouraged to interact and participate in different committee activities. And so in turn, I've encouraged all of the junior people that I interact with is get involved. It's very easy. People want to see young people involved. They want to meet new people. And so it was just such a great community that I have no second thoughts of, yes, I want to continue and I want to do as much as I can with this great group of friends effectively at this point.
Yeah, that's such a good reminder to us both who are kind of involved to really invite people in who we see maybe at the outside, and a good reminder for people who are more junior that we really do want them to join us at the table and not to kind of hang back and not to feel a part of things.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And being the chair of the program committee is a big job. How did you get to taking on that role, and what does it involve?
So I started my involvement with the Quad AA at the committee level. Adverse reactions to foods committees and anaphylaxis committees were the two that aligned most closely with my clinical and research interests. So those were the two that I was consistently present at and consistently engaged in various committee activities. And over time, the engagement was so high that I was asked whether I would be interested in being nominated to kind of head the anaphylaxis committee, and that experience um, was impactful in not only from the clinical perspective and the research perspective, but just engagement and the collegiality and seeing things at a much greater level outside of New York, across the US, like what are people doing and how can we better help our colleagues manage anaphylaxis and how to move the field forward. And so from there, a few years later, the AAAAI, the intersection, was formed, the anaphylaxis, drug allergy, and
Dermatology.
diseases. And so there was a call for people to, apply to be in the leadership role for that. So I, at that point, applied and was selected to be in the leadership of AAAAI, and then leadership of every intersection together comprise the annual meeting programming committee. And so in that position, I got to go to the annual meeting programming committee, or AMPC, meetings where we developed the educational programming for each year's meeting. And that further opened my eyes to, one, how wide this field is, two, how many motivated, engaged individuals there are to promote education in this field. And so over time, in working with the AMPC, I was asked whether I would be interested in being nominated to be chair, or to be vice chair, and then ultimately chair of the AMPC. And since it was such a positive, rewarding experience so far, it was a no-brainer for me to say, yes, I would certainly like to be nominated. And here I am.
That's awesome.
So in
Thank
terms
you
of
for,
the
for
work,
your organization of the meeting. I know a lot of work goes into it. So thanks for
yeah,
volunteering and working with it.
yeah, it's volunteer work, but it's really fun volunteer work. Again, it goes back to the people involved are all highly engaged, highly motivated, fun people. And so it makes the job less daunting. And so what we do is basically collect all the proposals that come in through the proposal site, and those get divided by intersection for topic area. And the intersections really sift through the proposals and work together to sometimes merge proposals, to develop new ones, or combine ones in different ways to make sure that each proposal is addressing the latest information clinically or research wise, but also that the topics will engage a broad audience within the Quad AI. So the clinicians, the basic science researchers, as well as the translational individuals. And so the intersections have a large role in kind of culling the proposals, developing new ones, such that we ultimately end up with the great educational programming that you see year after year.
Absolutely. And this year is actually a special year because it's the joint meeting of the Quad AI and the World Allergy Organization. When was the last time we had a joint congress like this?
So the last joint congress was in 2018.
And how is it different? How is it organized differently? Are there more people involved in the design of the meeting?
Yes. So this year, the WAO is involved in the development of the educational program. They function basically equivalent to an extra interest section. So they help develop a panel of sessions, basically, that addresses topics from the WAO perspective, which is more global. And so together with the intersections and the WAO representatives, we put together the educational session for this year, programming for this year.
And is it both virtual and in person? Are there both options?
So there are two options. The main one is attending in person, and with the in-person attendance registration, you also have access to recorded sessions that are available throughout the rest of the calendar year. The second option is purchasing solely the recorded content from the meeting.
And then the theme for this year's meeting is climate change and allergic disease, global impact on health. Why was that chosen as the theme?
So this year's theme meeting encompasses Paul Williams' presidential initiative, which is Environment, Climate Change, and Impact on Allergic Diseases, as well as to represent the partnership with the WAO. And so many of the sessions in this year's meeting will touch upon the theme in various ways so that attendees can see basically how integral the climate is to so much of our field and how wide ranging the effects are in terms of developing allergies, infections, effects on immunologic disorders, our management consideration, as well as potentially influencing interventions for these disorders.
That's great. It's such an important topic. I actually just talked with Kari Dindo about the impact of the environment and wildfire smoke, which is such a timely topic right now.
Yes, absolutely.
I know that this year's keynote speaker is Dr. Louis Ziska, who is discussing the effects of climate change on plant biology. Can you tell us a little bit about Dr. Ziska and what we have to look forward to in his talk?
Yeah, so Dr. Williams wanted to invite Dr. Ziska because we felt it's important for allergists and immunologists to understand how climate change has affected the plants that we really talk about and think about on a regular basis in relation to our patients. So I'm specifically looking forward to learning more about Dr. Ziska's work, which is focused on the rise in carbon dioxide levels and how that affects plant biology, as well as public health impacts on food security, especially on nutrition and pesticide use. So I think a lot of people think about climate change and respiratory health, but the food that we eat is also impacted by climate. And so, as a food allergist, I'm particularly interested in hearing how the climate change has impacted allergenicity content in the foods that we eat, and how that may impact food allergies going forward.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think how the effect that the climate may have on our food. I actually read this really interesting paper that it actually may change the nutrition content of the foods, that they're less nutritious, certain foods, because of the changes in the environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to delve further, and I certainly want to learn a lot more. The nutrition content can be altered, and also the quantities of allergenic protein can be altered. And so, in terms of food allergy, that potentially can have a big impact. Also, you know, the pollen food allergy syndrome is plant-based foods, and plants are significantly affected by the climate. And so, how that affects pollen counts and duration of the seasons or changes in seasonality, and how that influences pollen food syndrome is fascinating. And so I'm kind of interested to hear more, learn more, and knowledge is going to evolve certainly over time.
Absolutely. Well, the presidential plenary is entitled Environmental Influence on the Microbiome, Impact on Allergic Diseases. So that's kind of a different take on how the environmental impact of climate change is affecting not just maybe the plants and the allergen content and the nutrition, but actually the microbiome itself. Can you tell us a little bit more about what to expect from that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting and fascinating how climate change has such wide effects. We talked about the food that we eat being affected, the changing nutritional content, the changing allergenicity or content of allergenic proteins. But the food that we eat actually directly affects the gut microbiome. And so, there's a link there and how that the climate change can ultimately lead to alterations in our gut microbiome is going to be interesting to see. Um, Also, we talk about the changing weather patterns and pollen counts, how that affects our respiratory health. But the weather also affects our skin. So our skin microbiome can potentially be affected by the climate. So the plenary will give us some insights into how all these climate changes effects on our diet and our environmental exposures is affecting or could affect our immune system, and hopefully some information about, if we have base understanding of how the immune system is being affected, if there are ways that we can mitigate some of these effects.
Absolutely. We interface with the world in so many different ways through our respiratory tract, through our GI tract, and through our skin. And so all of these things in the environment have such a profound impact on our health. And there
Yes.
are other plenary sessions throughout the meeting. What other topics will be addressed? And are there things you're looking forward to hearing about?
Yeah, we have some other great plenaries lined up. One will cover the state of the art in vaccine development for major respiratory viruses, and we constantly hear in the news about the spikes in infections now because of these winter months, and I think it's going to be more and more of an issue, and so vaccine development is a hot area to learn more about. Another plenary will talk about the advances in asthma management, the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning methods in aiding research, as well as exploring epigenetic biomarkers to inform diagnosis and treatment for potentially more personalized care. And then guideline development and implementation at the population level. And then another plenary I'd like to highlight is about adapting the practice of allergy immunology to the climate change and the effects that we have already talked about.
A lot of good things to look forward to. I think one of the things I love about allergy immunology is all the developments we're seeing right now in the different areas, both in diagnostics and in therapies. And so it'll be great to hear more about what's going on and what we have to look forward to in the future. And then another highlight of the meeting is always the posters and the oral abstracts that discuss new research findings. Are there a place that people can find the abstracts ahead of time to review?
Yes, so abstracts will be published, then attendees will be able to access the abstracts and review them ahead of the meeting. In general, my approach for looking or learning more about these abstracts, because there are so many, we have had a higher submission rate this year than last year. So the way I approach oral abstracts is to review the session options and identify the ones that most interest me, which, given my clinical and research interests, often do align with ADA and FAAAAI intersections. So I'll have those highlighted on my schedule to make sure that I don't miss those. For the poster sessions, while I do like to skim the abstracts and flag certain ones that I might be interested in seeing the full poster for, I do like to just walk through the poster hall and look around and see the different projects, because often I end up stopping at something because there's something about the poster that caught my eye, or something about the presenter that sounded intriguing. So I just want to learn more. And often these are the ones that are not necessarily within my research area, but intrigues me enough to learn, because there is just so much in the field of allergy immunology to learn about. And then the one that session that I do want to highlight and make sure that people have on their schedules is a featured poster session, which I always love attending. That's on Sunday afternoon, and it's a nice venue to kind of walk through the posters that have been highlighted for this year and get a good chance to speak to the poster presenters, or the authors, and get their take in a kind of more calmer setting, because this is often in a separate space than the general poster hall.
I have had many experiences where I've been at a poster and hoping to catch people's eye. And so I always look for people that are excited to tell people about their poster. And I think that if you're just walking through, it can be a great experience to give someone the opportunity to go through their poster and tell you about their research. And you can learn really fascinating things.
Yeah, absolutely. It just definitely opens my eyes a lot wider when I just stroll through the poster area.
Yes. And one thing that's always a problem about the poster session on Sunday evening is that we're all hopefully excited about the Quiet AI Run Walk that's sponsored by the foundation, and it always overlaps. So I end up there not looking quite as good as I might have at some of the other sessions.
Yeah, and that's absolutely okay. And we did recognize that that overlap did create some stress and some conflicts for many. And so this year's meeting has made sure that those two events are separate in time. So the poster session is from 3:30 to 5, while the run walk, the check-in opens at 4:30. The race actually doesn't start till 5:30. So people can go to the featured poster session and then head over to the run walk afterwards.
I'm going to look so much better at the featured poster session than I usually do. So that's great.
Doesn't matter how you look, as long as you show up. I think that's the key.
I know that going to the meeting is so much about seeing our colleagues in person, which is such a fantastic experience. Are there other activities related to the foundation or kind of social activities that you're looking forward to or want to highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is an opening session, a ceremony, and a welcome reception on Thursday to kind of kick off the meeting. It'll be the Thursday kind of afternoon, 4:15 to 5:45. So these are events that I would hope that you put on your calendar. And certainly we have kind of the traditional committee meetings. That is another great venue to meet people with similar interests. And then the intersection sessions are going to be a little bit different this year, with interactivity and networking as more of a focus to give people more of an opportunity to connect, which has been, one of the suggestions that we have seen from years past.
Okay, and given you got involved because someone invited you to the table, we should make sure that we look around and invite people into the table and encourage people to come right up to the front or join the table.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you're on your way to the opening ceremony, grab a couple of people.
What are you most looking forward to?
For me, obviously, education is great, but I really am very much looking forward to reconnecting with friends and colleagues. That it's basically a reunion year after year, and it's become such a fun social activity. And it's great for our mental health and general wellness to have close connections. And so I think that's really high up there. But also every year I come home having kind of met a few new people, and that is also invigorating for me, that there are just so many people who have the shared interests, and kind of want to talk and share new ideas and potentially do projects together.
And I am also looking forward to the fact that it is in San Diego, and it is currently in the 20s here. And so in Boston, I'm sure New York isn't that much warmer. And even in the Midwest, I think they're supposed to be in the teens. So all of us can look forward to warm weather and getting outside.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. There's supposed to be, I think, another deep freeze coming along. And so I will have to remember to not just pack all my sweaters and, thick jackets, but also some lighter gear for San Diego.
Perfect. And then anything you want to tell us about 2026, things we can look forward to?
So 2026 is, we're just starting to talk about that. So certainly Dr. Brandt's presidential initiative will be featured highly in that meeting. So there will be more to come.
Fair enough. Is there anything you've learned about yourself or about the Quad AI as the chair of the programming committee?
I constantly learn about myself. I think running a large, or guiding, should say, a large group sometimes can be daunting, because there are a limited number of session slots with a lot of great ideas. And so kind of keeping the organization, keeping the audience in mind, basically the entire Quad AI community, is really important. And so navigating the hard decisions of, which proposal will get the remaining slots, and how are we best reaching all of the constituencies which within the Quad AI, making sure that there's something for everyone, is important. And so I think I've heighten my skills in organization and also broaden my thinking to always think outside of myself, because often in my clinical work and my research, I can focus on food allergies, and that can be my number one kind of across the board 24/7. But as part of the AMPC, I have to remind myself that, this meeting is not just for me, it's for everyone. And kind of working with enthusiastic individuals always makes it easier. So it's hard, but the output is, speaks for itself, really. And so I am, grateful to have this opportunity to lead the AMPC, and also really happy that I've gotten to meet so many people that I probably would not have as much chance to meet or spend as much time with if not for the AMPC.
Now, there's so many interesting topics. It must be hard to choose and to prioritize who gets the slots. But I know that every year the meeting is fantastic, and I appreciate all the work that the programming committee puts in to give us a fantastic meeting.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to be proud of, the AMPC. And so we're looking forward to kind of just seeing the sessions in action and seeing all the people who will be joining us in San Diego.
Where are we in 2026?
It will be in Philadelphia.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll see everyone in San Diego, but if not, we'll see them in Philadelphia in 2026. We hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode. As a reminder, this podcast is not intended to provide any individual medical advice to our listeners. We do hope that our conversations provide evidence-based information. Any questions pertaining to one's own health should always be discussed with their personal physician. The Find an Allergist search engine on the Academy website is a useful tool to locate a listing of board-certified allergists in your area. Use of this audio program is subject to the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology Terms of Use Agreement, which you can find at quadai.org. Please visit quadai.org for show notes and any pertinent links from today's conversation. If you like the show, please take a moment to subscribe to our podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify so you can receive new episodes in the future. Thank you again for listening, and I hope I see you in San Diego.